But another Rodgers thing that came up, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about. So don't expect him at the Pat McAfee show tonight. But Mike Florio gave some speculation as to why Rodgers is waiting. And this, I'll be honest, this isn't, I think, too far-fetched. He says Rodgers is waiting to see if the Steelers draft a first-round quarterback. I think that's the bigger issue. He told 93.7 The Fans, Andrew Filipponi, and Chris Mueller. And it goes more like this. What if we determine halfway through the season that this just isn't a year for the Steelers to do anything significant? Okay, let's find out what the young guy has. So I think you introduce a potential awkwardness. Kind of just what I was hinting to, right? I don't think he wants to go into a situation where there's going to be a chance that if things don't go well, he's going to get put on the bench for somebody else, Florio said of Rodgers, which would kind of be like the Falcons scenario last year with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins signed with the Falcons thinking that Falcons are going to draft someone to help me on offense in the first round or draft someone to improve the defense because we're going to try to win this division and try to make a playoff run. Falcons just showed out this big contract for me. They've been lacking in the quarterback department ever since Matt Ryan's prime days. So, yeah, there's no chance they're taking a quarterback, right? No one mocked a quarterback to them in the top 10. Nobody did. They came out of nowhere and took Penix. Everyone was shocked at that pick. Everyone thought it was a stupid pick. Turns out a year later, it was one of the smartest picks in last year's draft. I think it was a really good pick now. Hindsight being 2020. Like I was even questioning the pick. I really was, but you see how Kirk played last year, and the theme of how I've been talking about the Steelers this offseason is wouldn't hurt for us to overinvest in the quarterback position, kind of like what the Falcons did last year. But I wouldn't blame Rodgers for not wanting to sign up for that scenario, given he's 41 years old. He's stamped Hall of Famer, first ballot. Like his legacy is set in stone. He has nothing more to prove, right? It would be nice if he got another championship or two, but he's an all-timer. He doesn't, like I would assume, he doesn't want to go through another Jets type of situation where he's going to a new franchise where the familiarity isn't there. So the trust hasn't exactly been built up like it was with him and the Packers for being there for so long. And even you see there, distrust and things started to get a little hairy towards the end. But for Rodgers to go to a whole new situation, and it's only going to be short term, and to also have the potential for that team after you sign to draft a guy in the first round. And like Florio saying, if the season ain't going so well midway through, who's to say the Steelers don't do kind of what the Falcons did last year? Even though the Falcons waited a little bit longer than halfway through, but like, man, they don't have it. It's almost like even Russ last year. Now, I would assume Rodgers' contract, if we signed him, would be bigger than what Russ's contract was last year because that was the vet minimum. So we would have a little bit more invested in Rodgers, but not that much, man. Not that much. Like you don't have these ties to the Steelers. You don't have a history here. You don't have a legacy here necessarily. So if things go a little by the wayside to start off, I could see why Rodgers would, especially after experiencing what happened with the Jets, would have some PTSD and have some trust issues going into just a whole new organization, especially at the age that he's in and with everything he's accomplished and feeling like, man, I don't need to go into this situation and prove something and try to show that I'm better than a rookie coming in here. That like I'm Aaron Rodgers. Like I don't just want to come in here and try to hold off a Jackson Dart or Milrow or Shador Sanders. Nah, dude, like just give me the keys, put the trust in me, and let's see if we can win a championship. Let's try to go on a run. Let's try to go all in. Like that's got to be what Aaron Rodgers' mentality is. But I don't blame the Steelers for trying to keep all options open, kind of like the Falcons last year. They knew that Kirk Cousins had that Achilles injury. They've known Kirk Cousins, even though he's been, I don't know how to describe him. I think a quality starter, a good starter in this league. I'll say that. I'll give Kirk Cousins some credit. You guys know I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins fan, but he's been a quality, good starter in this league for a decade or so. Even with all that, he's been limited. So like the Falcons knew the rep on Cousins, the injury and just the limited play, even though he is a season in, season out type of starter. They're thinking, you know what? It's not going to hurt us to get some insurance behind him given his age as well. And Falcons were in the right for doing so. But I could see why Kirk Cousins wouldn't want to sign up for that. Right? You've been in this league long enough. It's like, man, the only reason for me coming back is to try to win a championship. And you drafting a dude in the first round is not helping our chances necessarily in winning a championship for this year. So what's in it for me? Now, luckily, I feel like the Steelers have a pretty good roster for a quarterback like Rodgers to come into with the DK Metcalf trade, having him and Pickens. You know, we invested pretty decently in our offensive line these last few years. Our defense is good on paper. So there's that. Like the team can afford to do that, but I could see why. I'm not going to front. I could see that side of things. I could see why Rodgers would maybe want to wait till the draft to see if the Steelers pick a guy in the first round. And then he has all the information available for what the Steelers roster is really going to look like. Because up to this point, yeah, anything can happen in the draft. He could sign up for something, and then the Steelers do like draft Shedeur Sanders, and maybe Rodgers thinking to himself, like, man, this isn't the exact situation I had in mind. Because the fans, the first sign of things going bad with the offense or things going bad with the team, the fans are going to be calling for Shedeur Sanders. And Rodgers at 41 is like, bro, come on. Like, what am I doing here? Right? What am I doing? Like, come on. This is not the type of situation I was signing up for or hoping for. Now, the catch-22 is if you make your decision before the draft, I think it makes it a little less likely that the Steelers are going to be picking a guy in the first round. Maybe they'll take a quarterback third or fourth. I think they definitely will take a quarterback in this draft, but that's a different story than picking a dude in the first round. Picking Will Howard in the third, picking Quinn Ewers in the fourth, or McCord in the fourth, something like that. That's like there's no expectations for that quarterback, right? None at all. Like you're thinking second year would be great for him. If Rodgers was just one and done, second year, maybe we might still even be thinking about drafting a quarterback in the first round. I think that's how much, or that's how little investment I think would like the Steelers would consider a third or fourth round quarterback pick to be. Or it's first round, it's Shedeur Sanders. Way different type of situation. Way different type. Now, the thing I think Florio gets a little bit wrong here with this assessment is what if we determine halfway through the season this just isn't the year for the Steelers to do anything significant? That's where you're wrong. No matter what, we're going to be in the mix. Even if we do get off to a slow start, we bounce back. We get to 500. We get back into the playoff hunt at some point in the season. We're always in the 500 stratosphere. We're going to go at least 9-8, 10-7. So I don't think we're going to be so bad where we consider the season lost and we want to get the young quarterback in there. So I think that's the one little flaw in Florio's argument here. It would have to be, and I don't think Rodgers is going to be playing that bad either. Given what he did last year, and he's going to be another year removed from this Achilles, he should be getting better. He should be getting more healthy, not knocking off the rust off more and more. He got better as the season went on. You compare, it's funny. I keep doing these Falcons comparisons, but you compare the two guys with the Achilles injuries, the two quarterbacks from last year. Rodgers got better as the season went on. Kirk Cousins got worse. Rodgers, he looked more young and more spry, more like his former self, whereas Cousins he looked like a shell of himself as the season went on. So sometimes these guys just age differently, and Rodgers and his ability to keep himself in good shape, I don't see why he wouldn't be able to pick up at least where he left off at the end of last season. And he finished with top 10 numbers in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. I think this is a good theory. I actually don't think this is a bad theory at all. But both sides kind of like the Steelers would be right in drafting a first round quarterback. Either way, whether Rodgers signs here or not, like they don't have any, I guess, promises that are being made to Rodgers or have to walk on eggshells uh, because of what Rodgers wants in regards to like the Steelers' future. Like the Steelers got to worry about themselves. They got to worry about their franchise for the here and now, but also their future. Like they can't be worried about if we draft a first round quarterback, how Rodgers is going to feel, kind of like the Falcons last year. But I also don't blame Rodgers for maybe being a little bit hesitant and not wanting to walk into a situation like that. So both sides can be in the right for wanting to do things or have the team set up a certain way. And that could be part of the holdup. It could be. Wanted to get to a couple other things here before I sign off. And two of them, these two things have to do with the quarterbacks from last year. So Big Ben's podcast had McAfee on it. And McAfee said that Rodgers isn't going to be at the big night out, but there was also some other headlines made. And this time it was by Big Ben himself on the show that was recorded today and released with McAfee being on it. He, man, tough job on the graphics today. Really botched that up. I got the image, my image over the text here. Tough look. Sorry about that. But anyway, Big Ben reiterated the claims that Arthur Smith didn't let Russ call some of these plays. He didn't give Russ full control like many expected to be the case, given that Russ is the Hall of Fame quarterback, been there, done that, 10-time Pro Bowler. Like he's got a solid resume in the NFL to where you shouldn't be necessarily handcuffing him. You shouldn't be holding him back from 2-minute drills or doing no huddles or making checks and audibles at the line of scrimmage. Like that's just malpractice. I said it at the time when the initial report came out with Dulac, and he said after the Bengals game, Arthur Smith apparently put the reins on Russell Wilson in the offense and didn't want Russell Wilson making audibles and doing checks at the line of scrimmage for the last however many weeks of the season. Meanwhile, that Bengals game is when the offense looked the absolute best and when Russell Wilson looked the absolute best. You have like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, outdueled Joe Burrow. Looked awesome. Looked absolutely awesome. So it didn't make any sense. It just sounded stupid. So many were saying that it was some fake news being put out there by Russ's camp. But Big Ben on the podcast today, just kind of out of nowhere, says, I was told Arthur Smith didn't let Russell Wilson call plays in 2-minute drills. Here's the full quote. Arthur Smith has to understand he has to let the quarterback have some reign. I was told he really pulled the reins back on Russ in the 2-minute drill, wouldn't let Russ call his own plays. You have to let a quarterback do that type of stuff. I don't think I've ever heard that in the NFL with a Super Bowl champ. McAfee said, reacting to Roethlisberger's comment. Yeah, it's just coaching malpractice, if true. This is not as I said, this is not the first report we've heard of this type of stuff, especially in 2-minute drills. Big Ben specifically brought up 2-minute drills in this little thing that he had to say, as opposed to Dulac kind of just talked about the whole offense and audibles and the checks that Russ wasn't able to do. But 2-minute drills, like that's Russ's calling card. That's a lot of these Hall of Fame quarterbacks and elite quarterbacks calling cards. Now, I don't think Russ is necessarily elite to that level anymore, but he's one of those type of dudes. 2-minute drills late in games when you're down, you need to run some of these no huddles and have the quarterback make calls at the line of scrimmage and do hurry up and try to get back into games and score quick. That's kind of stuff Russell Wilson can do. That was his claim to fame with Seattle. That's some of the stuff that he was even doing in Denver, even though some of the first halves of those games, Broncos offense was lackluster. He was pulling off some game-winning drives. He was pulling off some decent second half play at times. And he was doing that with us too until those last 5 weeks. And that all kind of coincides with the Dulac report where he said Arthur Smith, after that Bengals game, put the reins on Russ. Wasn't letting Russ call audibles. It just none of it makes sense, bro. So if it's true, it's just utter coaching malpractice. It's just egregious, egregious by whoever's like. If Tomlin's allowing this, that's a bad look, awful look. If Arthur Smith is really pushing for this or was pushing for this to be the case and this to be the power dynamic, that's awful. I don't know, man. I don't know what to believe. I really don't. But that's that for Russ. Yeah, maybe if this is all true, maybe we judged Russ a little too harshly. Maybe we judged him too harshly because that's just terrible. That's egregious. Now again, Russ didn't play his best down the stretch, but that's bad, man. That's bad. Last thing, like I said, these last couple of things had to do with the quarterbacks from last year. Fields had an introductory press conference with the New York Jets, and he had some things to say about his former team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was asked about why he made his decision to go to the Jets and if how things played out in Pittsburgh last year had anything to do with it. So Zach Rosenblatt, who is a Jets reporter, tweeted out some of the quotes from the press conference, and Justin Fields remarked on the Steelers benching him last year. It was different for me in a space I wasn't really comfortable in, but Coach T made a decision he thought was best for the team. I'm never going to go against that. I just tried to change my perspective and get better in practice. He's asked if the benching, if it factored into his decision. Not really. You can't take things personal. At the end of the day, I was just excited about what the Jets had going on here. It didn't have anything to do with Pittsburgh, with the opportunity I had here to make an impact. Last one. Justin Fields on Aaron Glenn's comments about finally letting him play quarterback, which Glenn maybe felt he hadn't been asked to do previously in the NFL. I did what I was asked to do. I never had a problem with that. I've always been a team player. I'm not going to get too much in depth into what happened in Chicago or Pittsburgh, but I'm grateful for all the experiences I had. I'm not going to front. I think Fields is just saying the right thing here because that benching had to have hit him a certain way. And then seeing how the season ended for the Steelers, he had to have been thinking, I don't know if I could trust this going forward. I really don't. And then the comments here, and I think part of it too, Jets were probably offering him more money. They were just flat out offering him more money than what the Steelers were. Now, they said the Steelers' offer was competitive, but there were some reports out there that there's a $10 million of guaranteed money difference there. So, I mean, that's going to factor in automatically as well. If the money's better with the Jets and Fields feels a little bit of distrust with the Steelers with how everything played out in 2024, and if he feels like from these comments that Aaron Glenn and the Jets are really all in on him and they're going to try to unleash him as best as possible, run an offense tailored towards him. And as these comments here, how, as he was asked, let him play quarterback, then I kind of don't blame him. If that's what was being sold to him, as opposed to what he experienced here in Pittsburgh for those first 6 weeks, and then him getting benched, and then us not giving him a high offer or as high of an offer like the Jets did. And we showed we had a wandering eye in free agency as well with Sam Darnold and Rodgers and all that. I don't blame Fields. I don't, because even though, like, I from the Steelers standpoint, at least, this whole play quarterback thing, Fields was playing quarterback, man. Like, Fields, he was playing solid at the position as well. Like, he was providing solid quarterback play. You weren't running like this spread option college style, very run heavy offense with Fields. We weren't doing that. I can't speak for what was going on in Chicago, but We weren't doing that with Fields. He was playing quarterback. Now, we limited his exposure in the passing game, though. We weren't asking him to throw it 40 times. So there's that. I don't know if we necessarily utilized him fully and tried to use his skill set to the fullest potential, but I also don't blame the Steelers for that either, because Fields was considered the backup going into the season, and you were just trying to get out of those games with a winning record, especially considering what Fields did look like in Chicago and how he was a turnover machine, and the record he had there, and how sometimes his play would get worse in the second halves. You didn't know what you could trust from Fields. So I think it was fine having a conservative approach, conservative offense for Fields those first 6 weeks. We went 4-2. He played really good. And you saw glimpses when we did have to open up the offense, like in the second half of that Colts game, what he was capable of. But that's also why he's probably bummed out, where he didn't really get a full crack to show all that he could do in being the guy. Like, he showed that he could win games for you. He could provide winning quarterback play, which was a big step in the right direction for Fields. But I could also see why he'd be disappointed. Like, man, you're benching me halfway through this. Like, I got so much more development to go. I'm only 6 games into this thing. If you give me a full season, what could this look like? If we're 4-2 and I'm giving you like top 15, top 12 quarterback play right now, 10-1 touchdown to interception ratio, what could it be if we start opening this thing up a little bit more and we start getting more exotic with some of these play calls? So, yeah, I think that's what is being pointed at here with these like Aaron Glenn comments, that Fields is going to be given like this big time opportunity to prove what he's worth at the quarterback position here. Like, we're going to have an offense set up for you. We're not going to limit you. We're not going to try to hold back your skill set or anything like that. We're going to try to play into it as much as possible. So, yeah, is what it is, man. It is what it is. I mean, that's how things played out this offseason. And it's funny with all this quarterback speculation and all this back and forth with Rodgers, and now the Steelers are going to draft a guy. We got Mason in house. Should we have just given Fields maybe a little bit extra security, give him a couple more assurances, maybe giving him an offer that matched the Jets, maybe even a little bit more, just to know that we have a guy in-house, a guy with the type of upside that Fields got? Because I'll say this again, you look at the draft, I don't know if there's anyone with more upside than Justin Fields right now. I'd say Cam Ward, maybe Cam Ward. Jalen Milroe's got the speed. He's got the arm strength, but Fields got that too. And I feel like Fields just has just a better feel for the game. At least whenever I watch both of them play, Fields versus Jalen Milroe. I think Fields even had that higher than Jalen Milroe coming out of college. Justin Fields at Ohio State versus Milroe at Alabama, but Fields now even has some of this NFL experience, and I saw him do good things with the Steelers last year and take a step in the right direction. Take a big step in the right direction. So, man, outside of Cam Ward, I don't know who has more upside in this draft at the quarterback position. I don't. And at least Fields, he gave you a certain floor last year. He really did. The familiarity would have been there. So that would have been the case for keeping Fields. But I'll be fine with us moving off of Fields and not going out of our way to bring him back if we get Rodgers, if that gets all taken care of. But if it doesn't, I think Steeler fans will be left scratching our heads as to what happened. Did we really make the right pivot this offseason? I think we'll be fine with. We could be fine with Mason though too. Like, we'll see, man. I don't think Fields is. I don't know if Fields is gonna be. I don't know if he's gonna be too fond of the decision to go with the Jets as time goes on, almost like with Le'Veon Bell. Unless Aaron Glenn and this new offensive coordinator really turn things around, it's tough, man. I think the Steelers would have been still, even if you had hurt feelings with how everything played out last year with the Steelers, I think the Steelers would have still been the better opportunity for Fields to prove that he could be a franchise quarterback in this league. Almost like going back to Kenny Pickett last offseason. Even though he wasn't happy with how everything was going with us signing Russ, He thought some promises were broken. Still probably would have been better for you to hang on here for another year. Your opportunity to still be a starter, to show the league that that's your brand as opposed to being a backup. I think it still would have been here because the only obstacle in your way would have been Russ, and it would have been an open competition. I think it wouldn't have been the whole Russ pole position thing. Maybe he would have got a little bit of a nod, but not as much as what it was whenever we brought Fields in here. And Russ clearly had the upper hand. Like, he was slated on the depth chart as QB1 with him and Fields. With Kenny, Tomlin said it was going to be a competition. He didn't say like Russ is the starter. He said it was going to be a competition, but Russ was going to be in the pole position. So there was at least that for Kenny. Whereas he went to the Eagles, he was the backup automatically, right? And then you saw Russ got hurt. Pickett would have got that opportunity that Fields got for 6 games. And then you see we already moved off of Russ after a year too. And Kenny would have been under contract. He would have been the only quarterback under contract going into this offseason. So like he screwed that up. And I think Fields might regret the decision to go to the Jets too. But we'll see how it all plays out, man. We will see. But that's it for today's show. Hope you guys enjoy. Stay chilling. Peace.